Over 2 years ago, I switched from using the Unity game engine to the open source Godot game engine to make my indie games. To be honest, I've never really looked back until today. I'm starting to think that was actually a pretty big mistake. But first, let's talk about why I switched to Godot 2 years ago, and maybe the perfect place to start would be how I got into game dev in the first place. Hey there, I'm Aramis. The year was 2020, the month was March, and the COVID-19 pandemic had just begun. And I had just participated in the Ludum Dare 46 game jam, making a little command line game using C#. Well, I actually attempted to participate. I didn't actually submit my game, but I was bitten by the game dev bug, and that's all that matters. You see, one of my favorite creators is Quillate. He was the one who originally got me into Ludum Dare, and he happened to have a tutorial channel making games with Unity. So at the time, I just dove into Unity, and it's really that simple. That's why I chose Unity originally. For years, I'd been trying to get into game development, only to fall victim to analysis paralysis again and again, trying to find that perfect game engine for me. So if you're in that boat right now, just pick an engine. It honestly doesn't even matter which engine you pick. Learning to make games is a never-ending journey. It's really just important that you begin to climb that mountain and start learning the process of game development, and then eventually you can always change engines, and I promise you a lot of the skills you learned will translate nicely. As I started to learn Unity, I also dove in and found a bunch more game dev creators here on YouTube. I came across Pontypants, I came across Blackthorn Prod and Jonas Tyroller, I found Brackies, and most importantly to our story here, I found DevDuck. At the time, DevDuck was using Unity to create his game Dolphin. In June of that year, he released this little video where he converted 6 months of his Dolphin work over to Godot. As the novice game dev myself, I decided to try out Godot as well, and I basically never looked back. So it's hard for me to parse out if I truly liked Godot more or if I was just falling more in love with making games. I'll honestly never know. But over the past 2+ years, I've made a bunch of prototype projects, participated in a handful of game jams, and shockingly, I even quit my job at the start of this year to become a full-time indie dev. And I'm proud to say that I'm just 1 month away from releasing my first ever commercial game, Chess Survivors, over on Steam. There's actually a demo live right now that you can play. And if you're watching this after November of 2022, then Chess Survivors is probably in early access or maybe even fully released. I'd be honored if you considered checking out my game, Chess Survivors. So again, it's hard for me to look back and tell you that switching to Godot was a good idea. Heck, up until this week, I probably would have told you that it was a great idea and that you should definitely use Godot. But now I'm starting to think that that might have been a mistake for one simple reason. When I quit my job and then decided to self-fund my indie dev journey, I promised myself I'd never bet my financial well-being on my game's success. So doing some simple budgeting and a little bit of projections, I figured out I'd run out of funding, also known as my personal savings to pay for my daily expenses and bills, sometime in the middle of November. And knowing how long it takes to get hired, I circled October 1st as the date I'd start looking for a real job again. Now, plan A was to release a game midsummer and see if I could earn enough to fund another game, but it's October now. So on to plan B, where I was gonna use my experience over the past year building my game, Chess Survivors, and all my little prototype projects to get a job at an indie dev studio. But if you look at the various job boards, you'll quickly find that almost all game studios are looking for devs with Unity, Unreal, or C++ experience, which by my calculations is distinctively not Godot experience. And that, dear viewer, is the reason I think switching to Godot might have been a mistake. Don't get me wrong, I do think game studios will eventually start using Godot, especially with Godot 4 on the horizons, but right now that's simply just not the case. Which brings me to plan C, where I leverage my software engineering experience to get a job. But don't be sad for me, this has been the best year of my life, and I don't plan on going anywhere. So should you also switch from Unity to Godot? Should you use either of them? Should you instead pick Unreal? Should you find your own engine, build your own engine? Should you use Game Maker? Should you what should you do? What should you do? My advice to you would be yes, use any and all of them. The only wrong choice would be to succumb to analysis paralysis and not pick anything, right? Game dev is a hard journey and you need to dive right in. But let me share with you some advice from one of my Twitch viewers, Benny Kane. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but Benny Kane wrote, "If you want to learn game dev and programming to get a job, I'd really recommend Unity or Unreal. Learning C# and C++ opens a lot of doors. If you strictly want to do it yourself, then Godot is great." Again, game dev is a long hobby. Just dive in and start learning it, and you'll very quickly learn if it's something for you. And if you're anything like me, you'll immediately fall in love with the game dev journey, and it could one day become your full-time job, like what I've been doing for the past 9 months. I've been Aramis. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.